in both cases, you could really sense that the vendors were kind of partners.
Biggest round we've ever seen in the core of the language industry.
Our mission is to eliminate language as a barrier to success for all immigrants so that they can achieve their American dream.
And welcome everyone to SlaterPod 97. Hi there, Esther.
Hi, Florian. How are you?
I'm good. Busy day yesterday with SlaterCon Remote. And today on the pod, we have Luis Miguel, the CEO of California-based EventPage Translations. Luis is a industry veteran of 25 years and has a really interesting story to tell. So stay tuned for that. Today, we're going to give you quite a super short news segment here because, again, we had short and sweet. We just had SlaterCon Remote, so there wasn't too much time to dive into other news. But of course, there's one breaking piece of news that, always happens when you record these things, but glad that we could still squeeze it in. So SmartLing raised a monster funding round, and you'll tell us just a bit more about this, but of course, we're going to deep dive later. First, though, let me just give you the recap of SlaterCon Remote. So, Slater, how many people did we have there, roughly?
We had more than 300 participants, which is a great turnout.
That's a great turnout. I mean, it's always with the time zone, you can't accommodate everybody. And I think SmartCat did the kind of Asia inclusion things where they had like two segments. I think for us, that's a bit of a stretch. So we always focused on the European and the US time zone, and then it kind of gets late a little bit for the Europeans if you want to accommodate the West Coast. Anyway, 300 people joined. Thank you so much. What I'm particularly proud of is I actually went into the system and we facilitated around 300 networking chats. And, that amounts to like 25, 30 hours of discussion. So
very good. You did the maths.
I did the math. So that's pretty cool. I mean, if you think about it, that's 25 hours of kind of industry connection, talking that we facilitated through the platform. In addition, of course, to the content, right, which was also super interesting. So yeah, great. I had a few chats. It was great. I hit the extend button a couple of times because we set it at like 5 minutes and then it counts down. So yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. You connect with some people on LinkedIn after?
Yes. So each time I go there, I connect and then, so it's good. It's good. It's not obviously like standing at the bar after, in-person conference, but still, I like it. So what I also like were these client case studies. I got to say, this time super interesting. So Intento presented together with Subway, and then Mouser Electronics presented together with Lingo24. And in both cases, you could really sense that the vendors were more kind of partners. And I'm saying this is not just some lame trope.
More than suppliers.
It's really, you could sense like, okay, this is an extended part of our localization team. Like we need this. We need them. It's not just a supplier and we could switch them out tomorrow. It's like, these are essential part of our operations here. And I really like that. It was a very kind of collaborative, I guess positioning. So
I think it's a good format. I really like, I agree. I mean, we've done it before, but I think, this time having two was really good.
Yeah, I think we should do more of these. It's really cool. It's really cool. And Subway, it was just interesting, her case study where it's like, hey, I get like 500,000 words, basically put on my desk. Hey, why don't you do this in like 2 weeks? And it's like, okay, well, I guess let's talk to somebody who helps me with MT. So that was interesting. So a big week for us. We got SlaterCon Remote, Esther, and we published our very latest 60-page monster report. But it's not about monsters. It's about transcreation. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, very exciting to release the transcreation and content origination report. I suppose transcreation is a shorthand. But yeah, it's pretty in depth, looking at both of those areas with a focus on advertising as well, how all of that happens within advertising. But I mean, yeah, like you said, 60 pages, so pretty extensive, pretty in depth. We're looking at, obviously, as normal, the role of language services in the space. So particularly with a focus on advertising and marketing, the different content types that language service providers and generally sort of transcreation providers are working with. Talking about a key part, which I think is the resourcing, how to actually produce, trans creation or go through the process of trans creation. And that I think probably was one of my key takeaways from the report, as well as the use of copywriters, and they are referred to by many people who are experienced and knowledgeable in the industry as copywriters or writers. Sometimes these are translators, but not necessarily typically always the translator profile that we would think of typically. And they can come from an advertising background, from a kind of more like writing background, rather than sort of what we would think of it as language background. And technology as well, I think, is pretty interesting to study that in the context of transcreation and content origination. And, Anna, who joined your segment for Slater Con Remote yesterday, was talking about, the relative resistance or the sort of selective application, I suppose, of technology within this space. So we take a bit of a look at that, how technology can be applied, is applied, and the areas where it's not really possible to make use of the kind of traditional translation and language technology. We also look at pricing, which I was pretty clueless about, I have to say, before, and something that really stood out to me, also from our talk with Rick Grant last week, was to do with the impact that actually 5 to 10 words can have if you're writing a slogan or something super important for a campaign. Does not make sense to charge by the word.
No,
not even a minimum. I mean, you wouldn't even a minimum fee, which obviously translation agencies, LSPs would apply when the word count is super low, does not account for the kind of the creativity and the effort that goes into producing something impactful like a slogan or
let me just pause you there for a second. I mean, I have a few friends that work in advertising, right? So I mean, to them, if you told them like, hey, are you charging by the word for your copy? They probably think you're out of your mind. Like, of course you're not charging by the word. I mean, like it's a super complex process. There's probably 20 different things you throw at the wall and see what eventually is going to end up. So I think it's just coming like from the language, from our translation vantage point, coming out of that, we're thinking that this could even be an option, but no, it's highly creative, of course.
No, well, yeah, but then I suppose it depends what you kind of count as advertising content, because I suppose there are
slogans.
Some scenarios where you'd be working in marketing there, and it is applied by the word. So there's a lot of different pricing models there that we explore in the report. And also another fascinating topic is the kind of complexity of the ecosystem. So LSPs are not always going to be working directly with the end clients, although people who have commissioned the advertising campaign. There's the role, the quite sort of serious, influential role of advertising agencies as well. And there's a guide to how to work with advertising agencies for language service providers in the report as well. So definitely pick it up.
And Anna also told me, and I like that one of the focus was when she was writing the report, putting it together, we did a lot of interviews, right? So it's very hard to put this in like quantitative terms and say like, okay, this is an XYZ sized market. It was, we did a lot of interviews with LSPs and providers in this space.
She spoke to 9 different LSPs,
Yeah, I think we spoke to even more, but like on the record, like we have right, 9. Okay. And so that it gives you a very broad picture about like how what LSPs can do in this space. So it's really meant to be a tool to help vendors derive additional revenues or enter this market. And if they're already kind of tentatively in, like scale up. This is really the point of this report. Again, I always say if I had these types of reports back in my LSP days, my life would have been a little bit easier. I would have just said to the salespeople, hey, here's your report. Go read it. Come back in a couple of days and, hit the phones
Make
or
some
the
sales.
Zooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no segue because it's not selling. It's it's selling a stake in your company, I guess. But Smartling.
The segue is a company that really does use technology from an industry that doesn't really so much.
That's right.
No, that was terrible.
Anyway,
go
let's
ahead.
go to Smartling. So what's going on with Smart? This is breaking news, by the way, everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
probably by the time you're listening to this, it has broken. But it's we're gonna do a lot of coverage on that initially, probably just a breaking news story. So tell us more. What's going on with Smartling?
Yeah, well, I think you said it mostly. The headline: Smartling has raised a mega amount of money, USD 160 million, so 160 million dollars in funding. Yeah, really recently. They just announced on Thursday, we think, this week, and coming from Battery Ventures. So this is all US based. Biggest round we've ever seen in the core of the language industry. So congratulations to Smartling. And this is, on the back of Smartling already being one of the best funded LSPs in the core translation and localization space. So that brings the total amount that they've raised to around, if not exceeding, $220 million.
That's a lot of change to play around with. So this is
a lot of ka-ching.
Ka-ching. So this is the most recent one. I think it was 2014, right? I'm checking the notes here.
Yeah, so it predates their last funding round. Predates Slater, which is
Slater.
Why we have not had the pleasure of covering a funding round from Smartling in previously.
Well, there we go.
But yeah, it's been a while in the making. This late stage round.
I guess they probably will call it, a growth round, right? So this is like it's kind of no longer VC stage. It's more growth. It's a business that's that's doing well, that's growing, that just needs that additional kind of boost. And we should probably ask him about a potential IPO maybe in a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're raising that amount of money at some point, you probably want to go to the stock market. So Jack Weldy, congratulations. Maybe he joins us back for another episode of the pod at some point and tells us a bit more about where all that money is going to go. That's a big round. That's a big round for a tech-based company, and that's going to inject a fair amount of additional competition into the space. I mean, now we can hire, a few dozen more salespeople. You can really continue to build the tech. So wow,
more than a few dozen for 160 mil, but yeah. It's good.
You're not going to hire 400.
It's great to see that.
Yeah, it's great to see. I mean, really, it is.
No, but you could.
You could. Well, let's ask him what the plans are.
It's great to see, though. It's really good to see in the industry. It's so much money. We like it.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We were just talking about Verbit raising, I don't know what it was, like $250,000.
250, wasn't it?
250 at like a $2 billion valuation. Here we have, hot in the heels, like the language industry kind of core, like Smartling, getting into the same ballpark. So this is big. This again shows
triple digit millions, or
triple digit millions. Shows the conviction. Shows the conviction that investors have in the longevity of this. And basically, obviously, we're totally past the whole NMT kind of disruptive narrative here. And so, yeah, great. All right. But now let's go to Luis Miguel from AvantPage for a great conversation. See you there. And welcome, everybody, and welcome back to Slater Pod. Joining us today is Luis Miguel, CEO of AvantPage Translation. Hi, Luis.
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Luis. Welcome.
Hey, Esther. Great
Thanks
to
for
see
joining.
you, and Florian as well.
Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, Luis, where are you joining us from today? What part of the U.S., what city?
I am coming to you from my home office in Davis, California. Davis is a very nice college town, about 60 miles to the northeast of San Francisco Bay Area.
Northeast of San Francisco. Yeah, that's where we met last. That was in 2019, our penultimate SlaterCon. So, we'll be back when this is all over in 2035. No. All right. Sorry, a little bit of a lame joke to get this started. So, Luis, tell us a bit more about your background, your route into the language industry. It's been a long road. You've been in this industry for quite a long time. But originally, you studied plant science and computer science at university, right? So, how come you ended up in language services?
Absolutely. Life takes us down very interesting roads, and I think what we need to do is just take them and go with the flow, make the best of it. Um, I actually started my first translation company back in 1990 with my wife at the time. And we started a company named Transcend here in Davis. And Transcend is still around. She's still running it. She's done a great job with it. And she was an interpreter at the time.
Hmm.
And through her interpreting assignments, we decided that it would be a great idea. Both her and I have had the entrepreneurial bug from a very, very long time. And business really was it's in my DNA. My family emigrated from Lebanon to Mexico back in about 100 years ago, a bit
Oh,
more
wow.
than that. And they've been in the business of business since. So I grew up working at my first job was at one of my father's businesses. So from a very early on age, I had the entrepreneurial bug. I also had the very studious, good boy bug of doing really well in school. When you're good at that, you think, okay, this is great. I can shine doing this. So I moved all that from high school through college through graduate school, and that's how I came to Davis. Came from Mexico to Colorado, and then Davis looked like a great agricultural school, and I came here back in 1989.
Wow. And
Yeah, and I think, well, fast forward a number of years, but it looks like you've just celebrated 25 years of service with AvantPage. So congratulations on that particular milestone. But I mean, take us back to the beginning and tell us what's the origin story of AvantPage, and then maybe some of the key milestones and challenges that you faced over the last 25
Absolutely,
years.
absolutely. Well, AvantPage came into existence in actually Halloween of 1996. So we just, as you mentioned, we just have celebrated our 25th anniversary. And the way it started is I was working as a software engineer in a company called Sybase. I think it's still around, but it was very strong at the time. It was working in database area. And I was disappointed. I didn't really like being as a software engineer. I had problems with my joints. I had carpal tunnel syndrome. So I decided to step back and go back to what I really loved. My wife had Transcend, and I decided to leave the software industry and start a new business in this area. The web was just starting to take off. And there was another trend that I recognized, which is that at the time, working with double byte languages like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and right to left languages like Arabic and Farsi was really complex. There really was no good software to do desktop publishing, word processing very well with it. Given my technical background, I was able to really understand it and do a good job. So the first few services that I started AvantPage doing was both website localization and desktop publishing these exotic languages.
well, that's very, very interesting. They came from the coding side, and then you transitioned into that. What seems like well, back then it must have been a niche. I mean, website anything in the
Absolutely.
mid '90s was a niche.
Yes.
So Just tell us a bit more about that. I mean, I'm really curious to know how was website localization in 1997 or 8? I mean, I first started playing around with Dreamweaver maybe in like 2004, but that's when it was almost consumer grade already, right? But
Absolutely. It was 10 years before. The main issue then, first, because I understood the technical issues, so I was able to produce a website, a page that displayed the different languages correctly. As long, of course, at that time, Unicode, you guys are familiar with Unicode, right? This is the way that almost every computer now represents every single language. At the time, there were many different encodings for the different languages. And so you needed to make sure that you were working with coding for, let's say, Vietnamese or Chinese or Korean, that your browsers at the time, Netscape was the biggest one.
yeah.
Microsoft Explorer was already, this was the time of the Netscape versus Microsoft in terms of the browser war was going on. So, the technical issues were much more complicated. But I mastered those. That was not the problem. The issue really was that the market was very, very difficult to crack.
Mhm.
There were not very many companies or institutions that had the know-how and the foresight to be translating their websites. So we did a few projects in the web space at that time, but the main area where we started really to get going and grow was in the handling of the languages in both translation and desktop publishing. So web started as one of our focuses, but because of the marketplace, the difficulty at that time, we moved away from it gradually over time and started concentrating more in the translation and the desktop publishing area.
So today, tell us about AvantPage in a nutshell. Like, so web, 25, 20 years ago, and then you transitioned to what you're now. So what's the company in a nutshell now? What are your key services, key client segments, industries? Just company in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Well, AvantPage, we are a mission-driven company. Our mission is to eliminate language as a barrier to success for all immigrants so that they can achieve their American dream. Very simple, right? But everything that we do, the kind of market that we pursue, the kind of people that we recruit, the growth strategy that we follow comes from that mission. We are based in Northern California. Our headquarters is here in Davis. We have a couple of locations that are, one is in Warsaw, Poland. A company in Mexico City hosts a good number of our project managers, desktop publishers, and proofers. They're leased employees for us over there. And we are virtual here in the United States. So we have a workforce that is spread out. Our main markets are both healthcare and state and local government here in the United States. Why are those the markets? Because we believe, as part of our mission, that those are areas that provide very important services to the people that don't speak English very well here in the United States. Most of them tend to be recent immigrants. And me being an immigrant originally from Mexico, I came to the United States around 1980. I identified very much with the difficulties of immigrants. I saw that language as a barrier continues to be a very important determinant of success here. My kids, when they were growing up, they were young, had a lot of friends at school that were similar to them. They had Mexican parents like me, and yet these other kids, they did not have their parents didn't speak English very well. their academic outcomes were dramatically different. So I gained an understanding and an empathy for their situation, and that's what drives who we are, what we do, where we are. The people that we recruit are the way we train them, the way we communicate internally, the market that we follow is all centered around that, making sure that that mission is fulfilled and that the vision is um, realized.
And you spoke about the healthcare sector there, and I imagine that that touches on, you know, government and then also the private sector and maybe some of the other segments that you deal with also. What do you think are some of the key differences between servicing government or state clients versus the private sector?
There are pretty big differences. The procurement process is very, very different, as you might imagine. Many times in the government area, they don't have much. The people that actually are providing the services are at the mercy of the people that are actually contracting, in the procurement area. Many times the government side has very rigid rules as to how they're going to be selecting a provider, and your performance has not much impact on that because the contract just ran for, let's say, 2 years, and we have to go back to bid. And depending on the way they classify the contract, it can be one that's completely based on cost. So that's one important difference. Another important difference tends to be also how savvy, how far in the localization maturity matrix the people that are procuring your services are. Government tends to be much more, people sort of, there's a lot more rotation, let's put it that way. And you never know the people that normally are in charge of the translations or interpreting or the services are not always very savvy about what they're doing. In the private sector, in healthcare, with the sophisticated health plans that we work with, hospitals and so on, the people in charge tend to be much savvier. They understand they need to invest. They know about translation memories. They know about glossaries. They know all of these things that are, at a basic level for us, but for somebody who's not privy to this industry, they've never done it, they don't really understand how those things work and how important they are.
So when you work for the government and also for the big healthcare providers, I think the U.S. kind of language access regulation / framework plays a big role. And
Yes.
From what we're seeing here, and we're both of us are based here in Europe, and it's sometimes kind of hard to crack the U.S. regulatory environment. But from what we're seeing, it seems with the new Biden administration, it's kind of come back a little bit more into focus, or definitely hasn't disappeared. I mean, it has gained in importance, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So would you agree that there is kind of a renewed push to for language access? And I mean, are you seeing kind of an increase in demand since the new administration, has been in power last year or this year? Last year.
That's a very interesting question. To be honest with you, the impact on us in particular, because of our market, hasn't been that huge. The actual laws that, because I mean, you're correct to point something out. We work in regulated industry. Both the healthcare sector and the government sector that we serve have regulations that obligate them to reach out, right? Language access to people that don't speak English well. But those laws that in particular are affecting us have been, at the federal level, they come from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Oh, okay.
There really has been no new no new laws enacted in that area. There's been regulations that are modified frequently, but the laws have not changed. but a great amount of the work that we do comes from state regulation and state laws. Those have not been affected by the change of government because we are the states that we tend to work in primarily are governed by Democrats in the west coast of the United States. And so they have not been affected by the change of administrations in Washington. The regulations have continued to get more stringent. So for us, that definitely has been a growth area. And you want to talk a little bit about COVID. Um, the pandemic has opened up a great amount of work opportunity for companies that are serving immigrants because of the emergency. There's been a whole lot of reaching out to people in electronic media, right? Which is where a lot of our companies are, the services that we provide are being consumed, both interpreting and translation.
On the interpreting side, do you do any on-site or and how has that been impacted, like long term? I guess initially, if you do it, probably there was almost a full stop, but then it came back quite quickly. Can you just tell us a bit more about that?
We actually, interpreting is new for us. We entered the market just a couple of years ago. So as the pandemic struck, we were entering the market. So we decided, of course, at that time that we did not want to go into the in-person interpreting because, of course, that collapsed. So we are strongly, and we're ramping up very strongly in the virtual interpreting area, both the over the phone and video. And that we've seen quite a bit of increase. But we're coming out from a couple of years ago. We were almost at zero. So that is a new market for us that we're exploring and we're really enjoying. It complements the services that we provide to our clients. So it's a very natural extension for us.
That's so interesting that you say that it's a natural extension. I mean, what's the natural part? Is it you're talking to the same decision makers? Is it the scheduling component of it? Is just the general understanding of the problem? Or is it all of the above or something else?
A whole lot of things, and you mentioned some of the issues. It's the same organizations that are serving the same people that we have been serving through translation. So a health plan has, let's say, to provide services for a population that speaks Chinese and Spanish, right? Well, for them, they have to provide both in uh, written communications as well as when they go and there's interactions with their physicians and with the organization per se. So they may not be the exact same people that are in charge of the translation and interpreting, but it's very much the same population. It's very similar regulations that apply to both of them, and the same kind of language mix that comes. So, and many times you see that in the procurement, the contracts are mixed both services.
Got it. And I mean, completely different topic, actually. But let's talk a little bit about the leadership team at AdvantPage and your approach as well to retaining and developing talent. I mean, you've been in business now for 25 years. I imagine you've got there with the help of a fair number of leaders other than just yourself as well. And also, I think at the moment in particular, we're hearing stories about how challenging it can be to hire really top talent in the US. So, I mean, what's your stance on all of that, the kind of leadership and hiring and retention of employees?
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question, Esther, because I think that really gets to a lot of what I was saying before, that it really comes from my mission. I've selected people that really share that mission and the vision that the company has. Um, in our case, we are a smallish company. and we have big ambitions and we have big expectations, but we haven't been very successful recruiting people that have uh, come from with a lot of experience from other translation companies. We've really had a
Mm.
lot of success developing our own people that start, you know, all my leadership team. I have 4 people in my leadership team besides me. Have Jorge Villafuerte, he's the director of technology. Vera Hoydunk, who is the director of operations. Joanna Osman, who's in charge of the marketing and business development area. And Nikki Speed James, who is in charge of people operations and finance. They all started from a project manager role or an IT role in the case of Jorge. And over the years, they've grown in the company. And um, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, uh, I understood that for a company to really be able to grow and develop, and for me not to be able to have to be doing everything, I need to have people that I really trusted that were better than me in their area. Let's put it that way, because that really is true. Even though I've been working in every single area of the company over the years, which I think is a big advantage, having people that are been coming through the company, know who we are, understand that the best interest of the company is what they're about, is been really critical. And we have a great group that we get together day in and day out. And if you ask me a lot of the details about what's going on in some areas, I might not know them because I defer to them. Uh, we use the philosophy of Pat Lencioni. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a
No?
great organization, Pat Lencioni, here in the US. He's a
Mhm.
great organizational psychology guy. And he's, I was inspired by him to set up this leadership team and to cultivate him. And luckily, they decided to stick around. I hope they decide to stick around for a little bit longer and to grow together with us.
Yeah, so those PMs, huh? PMs are great.
Yeah,
They can, we have some PMs in our organization as well.
Esther, were you a project manager too?
Yeah, I'm a proud former
There you
project
go.
manager, but it never leaves you. This is what I have. It never leaves you at all. I think was it Jorge you
Yes,
mentioned was
yes,
the
yes.
tech guy. So in terms of what he's developed and what he's looking after, it seems like you built out quite an extensive proprietary technology stack. So you've got, I think, Avant Data, Avant Flow, and Avant Memory that you've developed presumably in-house. From your side, or maybe coupled with Jorge, what is it that's influencing this buy versus build decision, and to bring some of the development in-house
Great
there?
question. And for a small company like us, I think that really is very critical. I think one of the most important things that I do as a CEO is to look around, see what's out there. What is, for example, right now there's a lot of activity on crypto, right? How is that? How is that affecting us? Does it? So I am always looking around, see what's going on. I go to conferences like SlaterCon, and I listen to podcasts and so on. And so look at what's happening in a certain area, and then I decide, is this really of interest to the company or not? If it's of interest, if it's not, then I just watch it. Maybe it's an interesting thing to see. But if it's of interest, then I decide, okay, is this something that we can develop? Does it make sense for us to develop it? Or is it better for us to buy or lease something that's already out there? For example, with machine translation, the is it something that impacts us? Of course it is, right? It's impacting every single company that's out there. But for us, given our market, it's not critical because both the
Mm.
government and the healthcare industry right now here in the United States, with the regulations that we have a number of years ago when machine translation was very, very poor, set some rules that says you can't use machine translation. So that's still in effect, things have not changed very much there. So machine translation, even though we're watching it, we decided it's not a critical technology for us right now, right? But on the other hand, translation memory, we decided it is a very critical technology for us. Then we see what is available out there, and we see that there's a great systems available that we can use, and they have great interfaces. So does it make sense for us to develop our own uh, machine memory? I mean, translation memory? We decided no. Let's lease one of the existing or maybe play with several of them. So what we decided to do is to create a layer. We really saw that
Mm.
data is becoming hugely important. So the first thing that we decided to do is to create Avant Data, a huge repository of information. So we start capturing all the data that we produce in all the systems that we have. We had all of these disparate systems, right? And we decided the first thing, let's capture this data. We'll know what to do with it later. Then we started looking at it, reporting to the leadership team through dashboards. And once we started looking at all that data that was coming from the different systems in a more unified sense, we said, okay, let's start developing some new um, capabilities that put together these systems that we're using and this data that we have. So you mentioned Avant Data is the core, but we now have something called Avant Portal. Avant Portal puts
Mm.
together all of the systems, the disparate systems that we have in a single login so that our clients are able to log into the portal and then automatically they're able to see all of their interpreting assignments. They're able to see all of their translation assignments. They're able to communicate with the project manager. So we decided to be more of a unifier of all the systems, provide a unified platform for our clients. And at the same time, to be able to make it very, very open so that as technologies change on the outside, we can connect to the different kinds of websites that are out there, to different kinds of CRMs that are out there, to the accounting softwares that are out there, and so on. So we decided that to be the glue and provide some additional capabilities and make it really easy and comprehensive for our clients to be able to do the work that they need to do day in and day out.
Makes sense. Hey, so in terms of scaling the business and growing, future plans for growth, what's your approach or attitude to things like M&A, or are you sort of prioritizing organic growth at this phase?
That's a really, really good question. As Florian well knows, there's a huge amount of M&A activity going on right now, both smaller, larger companies that are absorbing smaller companies in the industry, outside capital coming in, and, companies that want to just buy, others that just want to absorb. Uh, because of our mission, I have not wanted to relinquish control of the company so far because I believe that the commitment to eliminate language as a barrier for immigrants would be lost if we become part of a bigger corporate entity. And so that is a decision that I made that is really comes from our mission. On the other hand, another thing that I believe to be really, really important is I'm from Mexico. And the decision that I made to go and work with this other company in Mexico had also to do with the fact that I wanted to develop this industry and this talent base in Mexico, where I come from,
Mm.
because I have a commitment to doing some social good for the people there. I've seen in the 40 years that I've been here in the United States, I've seen a huge improvement in the educational level and the achievement level of a lot of the people there. And it takes a while for a new area to take over. As you guys well know, Argentina seems to be the big Latin America hub for translation. But I believe there's also a huge amount of talent and potential in a place like Mexico. So that's where a lot of why I've been reluctant to go the M&A route for us. And another thing is, as you said, as you noticed, I've been in the business for 25 years. Um, the fastest way to get there, in my opinion, is slowly. So I've been building up the technology over the last 5 years. Right now, we're at the point where we, I think, have this great interface for our clients. We're actually starting to develop some very exciting new technologies in the interpreting area. And slowly but surely, I think we're building it more and more and more. And we'll get to the point where I think we can then decide at some point, once we're stronger, if there is a place for us to become part of a bigger organization or start buying other companies. For now, the best thing for Advantage, we've decided is to continue to grow organically. And I also, money has never been a big motivator for me. It just has not been. My experience and philosophy is, if you do great work, money will come. That's, I've been very fortunate that has happened. And so when people come and want to buy me out and offer me money, at this point, I tell them, I'm sorry, just at this point, that's not what we're after. We're after there's something that is greater than that, and that's our mission.
Now, when you say, or when you say you've been in business for 25 years, and I've seen, I mean, I've been in this business now for what, like roughly 15 years. Where would you see how bullish or optimistic do you feel about the industry? Let's say in the next 3 to 5 years, in the framework of the past 25 years. Not just let's look at in the future, but like at
Right.
what point of excitement are you at? Is it the late 90s and the web explodes? Is it like I don't know, some type of crisis in the Great Recession? Like yeah, how do you feel, general? Like in the arc of the 25 years.
Florian, I think as you've seen, I'm an optimist. I really think that we are starting out in this industry. There's a huge way to go. Uh, I think that the changes that we've seen in the technology, the changes that we've seen in the marketplace, favor us. Uh, the meat and potatoes of our company continues to be, what project managers do day in and day out. I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future, because I see it as being a service industry. The way we procure the actual language translation and interpretation to the clients, that has been changing, right? It used to be that there were no translation memories. It was only pure, translators and interpreters on the other side. Now we have some mediation of the systems. In some cases, you're going to have great quality with just machine translation. But ultimately, our clientele, our client base, the people that we're working with, have a need for some service. So I see the source of where the language comes as one thing that has changed a lot. But the service that we provide to our client base, the basic things, we have to have people that are selling. We need to have a marketing department. We need to have an accounting department. I see that has been pretty constant. I don't
Hmm.
think that in essence is going to change. what I see changing is in the area of technology, which is where we're growing, as we just talked about. And I believe we're being responsive. We may not be the pioneers, we're not the first ones to do what we're doing, but I think that if we do it well and we do it consistently, there's a market for it. So I see it growing steadily. You know, I'm in my 60s. I'm in no hurry to retire. I love this industry. Uh, you know, you guys have been around for a while. I think Renato Beninato says that this is one of the great things about this is that once you start working here, people just love it and stay here. And you know, it's a small world. I mean, you remember from seeing me a few years ago in StaterCon, right? Even though there's thousands and thousands of companies all over the world, in a sense, we're really small.
Yeah, in a sense, we're small, but I do uncover new people and companies every day, and that's
Yeah.
what keeps me engaged. But it's
It keeps us, yeah, it keeps us on our toes, doesn't it? When we find new niches, new
Yeah,
things, new developments.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And I think that's the vibrancy of the industry that I think keeps us engaged. You know, there's always new things. I've been in the industry for 25 plus years, but there's something new that comes along today, you know, next month, next year. And I love that.
let's end on the love that note. And thanks so much for joining us today, Luis. It was great having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Florian. It's wonderful to be with you.